your official brief.
Favourite subject?
Brexit. Now, of course, we were mentioning in the introduction to the interview that you are now officially supporting the idea of a second Brexit vote. So are you going to be putting down an amendment for a second referendum this week?
The position that Jeremy Corbyn outlined the week before last is that we will either table or support an amendment in favour of a public vote. The timing of that is really important. This Tuesday is obviously the opportunity we get to vote again on the deal, and I think there's a growing feeling that this Tuesday should be pretty well a straight up-down vote on that deal, because what we've seen is that the deal itself, 585 pages of the withdrawal agreement, 26 pages of the political declaration, 610 pages, that was signed off on the 25th of November last year by the EU27 and by the UK. It was then voted on 8 weeks ago on the 15th of January, as you know, went down by 230 votes. Not one word of that has ever been changed. And so what we're going to get on Tuesday, it seems, unless something dramatic happens, is the extraordinary thing where the Prime Minister will bring exactly the same deal, exactly the same, not a word different, and put it before Parliament 8 weeks after she left.
They are still hoping for the EU to give some more assurances they want.
Well, they're hoping for that, but they've been, for weeks and weeks and weeks, going backwards and forwards, saying we want changes to the backstop. They're getting absolutely nowhere. And one of the things I've tried to raise in the House of Commons over and over again is the Prime Minister is raising expectations that she will not fulfil. Now, I don't know whether something dramatic will happen in the next 24 hours, but unless it does, exactly the same deal is going to be put before Parliament. Now, on both sides of the House, there's going to be a growing frustration about that, because that is 8 weeks of failure to come back and present exactly what was rejected. And so on Tuesday, that has got to be exposed, because we cannot go on like that. And then, obviously, on Wednesday and on Thursday, if the deal goes down, we've got the opportunity to deal with this issue of no deal, and then to go on and deal with the question of extension.
Because I can't help but thinking that you're talking about the growing frustration of MPs, that there'll be a growing frustration of Labour Party members that there is no amendment being tabled on a second referendum. I can just show you what John McDonnell said 10 days ago. He said, when the meaningful vote comes back, that's the time when we will have to put the amendment up. So why aren't you putting one up?
Well, we have to make decisions about what is going to happen on Tuesday. There was an expectation that the deal would be different. I think across Parliament, now people know the deal is the same. There is a strong sense that it should be an up-down vote on the deal. Now, that's not just a sort of Labour position. When back in on the 15th of January, when we first went through this exercise, there were lots of amendments down. And in the end, across the House, everybody pretty well pulled their amendments and said, we need to know the size of the defeat if it is a defeat. And I think we're back at that moment on Tuesday. Doesn't mean that the public vote's gone. It doesn't mean we won't come to it, but it means that we do it. I mean, Tuesday is about exposing the weakness of the Prime Minister and then moving
So when are you going to do it then?
Well, we'll have to work with others across, as you know, as well as I do. If there's to be a winning amendment on anything, it normally comes from the back bench rather than the front bench. And that's
so you might not put an amendment down at all then?
Well, we will be putting down amendments. There'll be amendments probably on Tuesday. But as I say, the feeling about Tuesday is that should expose the weakness of the Prime Minister. We then go on the next day to deal with no deal. So if the Prime Minister's deal goes down, Parliament will then vote on whether there should be no deal. If Parliament says there should be, we should say no to no deal, and I'm sure it will, we'll go on Thursday to deal with should there be an extension. So, and then the week after that, there have to be further votes on what's called the Section 13 procedure. So there's going to be plenty of opportunities for amendments. But I do come back to the central point about Tuesday, because this isn't just an opposition thing. I think if you look across the House, the frustration, I think the disbelief that the Prime Minister is literally going to put the same deal back and 8 weeks later and say, well, you didn't vote for it last time, vote for it now.
Because I can't help thinking that, a cynic would look at what's happening and say, Labour is just dangling the prospect of a second referendum to satisfy its membership with no intention of actually doing what's needed to make it happen.
Well, Sophie, we've been absolutely clear that we are supporting a public vote, a lock, if you like, on the Prime Minister's deal. We have to work.
But you won't put forward an amendment.
We have to work across the House. Everybody has to assess when it's the right time to put amendments and to vote on them. And in the end, we have to work with our backbenchers. Every pretty well everything we've won or achieved in the last 2 years has been where a backbencher's put down an amendment and then sufficient MPs have got behind it. And that's what needs to happen.
Now, one of the crucial votes that we're expecting this week is on a potential delay.
Yes.
We know how Labour's going to vote on Theresa May's deal. We know how you're going to vote on no deal. So when it comes to a delay of Brexit, how long is acceptable?
Well, the first thing I need to say about this is not a policy of choice. Nobody's been championing an extension. This is now necessary because of the position we find ourselves in. In my discussions in Brussels, it seems clear that a delay or an extension of about 3 months is probably doable. Beyond that, it becomes much more difficult. So we need to look at that sort of period in the first instance. But the most important thing, I think, is what are we going to use this period for? What we just cannot have, is a Prime Minister at the end of this week saying, I now see it's all about the backstop. That's the problem. I'm going to carry on and I'll have further discussions and negotiations about the backstop with our EU partners. We've got to stop that and say, right, if there is to be an extension, what are we going to use that period for?
I mean, one of the ideas that is being seriously discussed is this kind of Norway-style agreement. Jeremy Corbyn, we know, met with a group of MPs who were putting that agreement forward, including some Conservatives, unusually for the Labour leader. What happened in that meeting, and is this something that Labour is seriously considering?
Look, across the House of Commons, there are all sorts of proposals about finding a way through, breaking the impasse, and the so-called Norway model, common market 2, is one of those. And I think everybody is looking seriously at all the propositions.
So you are looking seriously at backing it?
We have got to break the impasse. We've got a deal that isn't getting through, and we can't just keep running down the clock. So, and this is the point for the Prime Minister, sooner or later, Parliament is going to have to decide what happens next. Now, we have been saying there should be a close economic relationship with a customs union and single market alignment. We're also saying there should be a public vote. So it's clear where we are, but of course we've got to talk to people across the House because we've got to find a majority so that we can actually move forward. Otherwise, the extension, however long it is not going to be capable of actually resolving this. And as you know, I think across the country, people are saying you've got to break the impasse.
In the spirit of trying to provide clarity, we're talking there about Norway, some of the different deals that could happen if the UK stays in. We're also talking about the idea of a second public vote where presumably Remain will be on the ballot paper. So just to be really, really clear about Labour's position, do you want to leave or not?
Well, we campaigned to Remain, but when the result came out, we said we accept the result. And then
So you want to stay in?
In the 27 manifesto, we said we would trigger Article 50, and we voted to trigger Article 50 in good faith at the beginning of the 2-year period and said to the Prime Minister, go off and negotiate. At the very beginning, we said, these are the conditions when you come back. We're not going to accept anything you come back with. These are the conditions for accepting your deal. We've now got to the end of the exercise, and we are staring at the same deal with the same red lines, which we reject, or no deal. And it's in those circumstances that the Labour Party has said, against that backdrop, there ought to be a public vote.
So do you want to stay in or not?
Well, at the moment, we've taken a decision to leave. We've got to where we are. If there's a public vote, that would operate as a lock, if you like, on any deal that Theresa May gets through. If that is the position, then in my view, the default ought to be Remain. If we are in that situation, as I said last time I was across this table with you, I would personally vote Remain. But this has to be seen in its context because the whole process is a 2-year process during which the Prime Minister should have negotiated a deal. She hasn't got a deal that's going to be acceptable to Parliament. And so we now have to assess the position that we're actually in, and that's why we're now backing a public vote.